Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. My guest today is Daphne Wright, who is an author. And Daphne and I met on a podcast matchmaking site, I would call it. And I think I read through her biography, and I think she's got a pretty interesting background, and especially one of her books she wrote. Welcome to the podcast, Daphne.
Me.
So, Daphne, you have a book, and the name of the book is called On Love and Death and Belonging. And you have three characters in this book. And one of the people that are in the book, his name is Bryce. And
Yeah.
he is a gay man, and he is 65 and retiring. And maybe you could just tell us, let's back up. First, tell me why you wrote this book and what inspired you to do this.
I've always wanted to write. I work as a nurse, and until you kind of come home at the end of the day and maybe you write a little bit, then you're tired.
Yeah.
So basically life got in the way, and I had this character in my head, Bryce, who happened to be gay, and I am not gay, but I don't know, he was just fun and he was out there. And when boomers started to turn 65, it was going to be the biggest population in the history of the world that we're looking at were they going to get care. And Bryce actually is a bit younger. He's in his 50s. But that's another story, too. So it's basically, how is he going to get care? Because he's been diagnosed with a terminal illness, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. And unfortunately, nowadays, I think it holds true for the U.S., I am in Canada, that if you need, like, intensive care, unless you are rich, or have unbelievable support, people are looking at going into long-term care to get the care that they need.
Yeah, and it's not always, and in the US, if you have to go into one of these facilities for long-term care, it's not a 5-star experience at all. It's actually not a great experience from what I've seen.
For a lot of them, unless, of course, you have money.
Yeah, unless you have money or you've had this insurance to pay for this whenever you get older, but you've had to pay into it for 20 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so is this someone that you knew, Bryce, or was this someone that was a fictional character that you made up?
I guess, I don't know, because he lives in my head, this Bryce.
Okay.
Sorry, waving goodbye to my husband here. I had started different stories and never finished them. And it wasn't until my book came out, one of my friends said, "Oh, Bryce, you've been writing about him for some time." And I guess he's just in my head, and he's a wonderful person, and I wanted to bring him forth. And
so tell me, so you're a nurse, you came home, you would write sometimes when you had time, because being a nurse is definitely a very busy lifestyle. And I'm assuming you took care of people as they were sick and ill, and maybe towards the end of their life. You probably have experienced all this being a nurse throughout. And is that some of the things that kind of made you step back and think, I want to write about this?
Yeah, it wasn't originally. It was going to be a little more of it's actually a fun book, to be honest, but even with all the stuff in it. But I wanted to explore, what would it be like? Because I've seen it. I've seen it from another aspect, helping people with various illnesses. But what would it be like to be given a diagnosis, and in this case ALS, that is it's terminal, and it's a devastating illness, and what would one do to navigate that? And just let other people understand maybe give them a little bit of empathy about what that would be like for someone, if it was you that was diagnosed with something like this.
Yeah. I've been in a relationship and married, and we've been together for 26 years, and we've talked about that, about what do we do when we get older? We don't have kids.
Yeah.
And luckily my mom's mostly pretty healthy, and she's had a couple of knee replacements and shoulder replacement and hip replacement, things like that. But for the most part, she's got friends, and she's got me and my brother, and we can take care of her and stuff. But one day, when me and my husband get older, we don't have those kids that are going to come and take care of us. I mean, we have nieces and nephews, and hopefully they'll be willing to do that. And we have talked about that. What do we do one day? If you don't have that support one of us gets ALS, or we get Parkinson's, or we get a disease that could, or whenever one of us dies before the other.
Yeah.
And what do you do if you're by yourself and some of this stuff happens?
Yeah, and I do want to add, just because one has children doesn't always mean that they're going to help either. I have noticed.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I've seen that as well too.
Yeah, and I don't have children either. So my husband and I have contemplated these things. And in the book, Bryce has been married and he and his husband were in love and had a great life. And then his partner died 6 years previously to when we meet Bryce. So Bryce had taken care of him, and Bryce understands what it means to care for someone. And in this case, his husband had cancer, what that entails. So he understands now it's his turn, and he has no one that can do that for him. So he has more awareness of, wow, I'm going to need help. Who's going to give it to me?
And does he have friends that help him, or is he left on his own to care for himself?
That's the thing. Bryce is a wonderful person, and he's a lot of fun. But since his partner died, and it is 6 years, but people grieve differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so since his partner has died, he's isolated himself. And that's one of the things in my book that I wanted to, my 3 characters, all in some way have isolated themselves and have some loneliness in their lives.
And I think that's common when people do get ill or they get older and get sick, that they don't want to leave their home. They just feel more comfortable being alone. There's a lot of sadness and depression. Yeah, I think that's very common.
Actually, sadly, I don't know if you read your Surgeon General's report in 2023. Actually, I think it was like 82 pages, but it was a really good read out of the U.S. And the paper was about social isolation and loneliness, and it's throughout the board. It's young people, middle-aged people, older people. I sometimes think to myself, we've got all these ways to communicate, and yet people seem to be communicating less and less in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I agree. And if you think about, I just think about like when I was in college and even having friends in college, it was on the phone that you'd have to call them. There was no text messaging or emailing really at that time. So it's like they have more ways to get in touch with each other, but they're less personal in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and sadly, I think some people think their friends are their Facebook or Instagram people, and the real face-to-face kind of meaningful relationships seem to be, I'm not quite sure, but it is an epidemic of loneliness out there, and I wanted to touch on that. How do we create community and find friendship?
Yeah, so what is your thoughts on that? Like, how do you create community and friendship in your life?
It does take some work, my friend.
Yeah.
I did go back to school over a decade ago for a master's in more like liberal art. Mm-hmm. I wanted to meet some different people and broaden my horizons. Mm-hmm. I joined groups. I try to contact my friends and keep in touch. You know, sometimes it's only 1 or 2 times a year, and I do use the phone. I try to talk to people. Yeah, I do email and messenger, and I also try to talk to people. And I've had a lot of friends that have moved. COVID was devastating for people.
Yes. I think a lot of loneliness really popped up whenever COVID happened.
I know. I think, it brought us together in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because we were united in this pandemic. But I, as a nurse, I'm still working. I do see a lot of anxiety and depression and loneliness still. And I think, how do we form communities? And I try to tell people, do you join a group? Yeah, you may not necessarily like them. They may not like you, but you're getting out and you're trying. Mm-hmm. Or you maybe take a class, go to a community center. How do we keep community going?
Yeah. And so have you and your husband talked about if one day, if you're in that Bryce situation, what would you do? Because we've had that conversation. I'd be curious to know, since you and your husband don't have kids also, like, what is your thoughts?
Right now, it's a hope and a prayer. Yeah. So just where's the wood? Very blessed with good health.
Yeah.
But we are getting older, and what do we do? It is a consideration, and I thank you because I feel I need to have a little more of a discussion on that, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I am a nurse who talks to people about these things, and yet walk the talk, Daphne. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it, and we've gone to the extreme where if one day we're both, I don't know, in our 80s and we've had a fulfilled life and one of us is going, we'll just do Thelma and Louise and drive off the cliff together just because maybe we don't want to live. We'll see how it goes. But
That's exactly also what's in my book as well,
Hmm?
because Bryce does look at medical assistance in dying.
Yeah. So tell me about that because I think that's so interesting. And I think it's controversial.
Hmm?
And I know it's legal in Oregon now and it's legal in Switzerland. And I think there was a couple other places in the US that just got voted for it and it could be legal now. And I agree with it. I think if you want to do that, you should be allowed because it's your life. But what are your thoughts on it and what do you hear about it?
Well, actually, in the U.S., I thought it was 10 states, but I listened to something recently. 11 of your states allowed, we call it medical assistance in dying up here. I think down there it's assisted suicide.
Suicide. Yeah.
I know the UK is looking at it. The Netherlands have had it for Belgium, Switzerland. Okay, we have medical assistance in living. And that seems to be the end goal is living.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that is not the goal we all want. But sometimes as a nurse, I have seen people and you think to yourself, is this really what you wanted? Because I think sometimes we think the outcome's going to be, everything's going to be marvelous.
Yeah.
And it's not always. In a lot of cases, you're thinking to yourself as a nurse, what is it I'm doing here? Is this helping anybody really? So, yeah, I do think there are some things that in life we may not want to continue on with. And yet, our medical system has put into place things that you can keep going and
Yeah.
keep going. And death is a part of life. The big joke I have is they did a longitudinal study in Canada. It's the longest they've ever done. And at the end of it, they just came up with the fact that 100% of people will die eventually. I do agree with it. I know there are some issues up in here in Canada. It's on hold, like some of the advancements that they wanted to do. It's on hold right now, I think until 2027. But yes, I do think it's a great option for people.
As a nurse, has anybody ever asked you for help and whenever they wanted to stop living because they've just been so miserable?
No, actually, and I've done a lot of different kinds of nursing. I've done critical care. Now, sometimes those people can't talk to you.
Yeah.
And I've done palliative care. And I guess, too, that's another issue. If people can get palliative care and good palliative care, would they then consider medical assistance in dying or not? So they're looking at those aspects, too, up here. Are people choosing it just because there's no other option? And you don't want that ever to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I have not been faced with that, and because it wasn't legal at the time, and I'm not a practitioner.
Yeah.
I would not be able to do that. I might help, like now I can help them get to the avenues of
Yeah.
how do you access it, but no, I'm not involved in it.
Yeah. And tell me about the other two characters in your book.
We have Fiona, and she is a burned out nurse who still needs to work. Life hasn't gone the way she thought it was going to go.
Okay.
I think I think sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to get to whatever stage and life's going to be rosy. It hasn't. And she's isolated herself too. Again, life hasn't gone the way she wanted. She still has to work. And somehow, and friends have, I live in Vancouver. It's a big city, and people move away because they can't afford the big city. They don't like the big city. So a lot of times I'm looking around, like my friends are a good hour, 2 hours of drive away or plane ride away. So that isolates you as well. And so she has stayed in Vancouver, but a lot of her friends have moved away, and her family lives in another province. She just gets up, goes to work, and goes home.
Yeah.
My other character is Adelina, and I wanted to talk about as well marginalization in the workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we're seeing, at least here in Canada, a lot of people that to our country are they get into marginalized jobs, and I'm not saying being in healthcare like a home support worker or housekeeping staff is not a dignified job.
Yes.
But you can start to see the marginalization in a lot of those jobs of people that are coming in from other countries. So I wanted to touch on that. And unfortunately, she has a partner who's abusive, but she is very religious, and her religion.
Yeah. And is her religion keep her in her relationship too? Because that's just what she's supposed to do in her religion.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, I know these characters are in your head, but it sounds like they're really part of they're pretty nonfiction characters in a lot of ways. These are real life events that are happening to people, especially in today's world.
They are. But I want to, a lot of laughter in my book as well.
Good.
That is life. When I was reading it, the back cover again, I'd be going, "Oh my God!" But people, it's got a lot of light moments, and it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah. And any plans to write a future book, your next book?
I've started in another one, and I've also done a few short stories that I'm submitting. I did indie publish this book for anyone out there that's looking at publishing. One of my friends said you're going to be 102 by the time a traditional publisher even looks at it. I thought 102 might be a great age, but I want to have a book done way before then.
Yeah.
So I indie published it, and it's sometimes when you say that to people, they're thinking, "Oh my God, she's going to show up with a notebook that's stapled and nobody's edited it or anything." No, it's quite a professional book. I even won a couple of awards.
Yeah. And you
And
got really good ratings on Amazon, at least in the US. Yes, you got you're almost at a 5-star rating on Amazon in the US. So
yeah, and I will say, people have told me that they really love the characters and they've really gotten into them. I'm more of a character driven. I'm not describing the trees and the fragrance in the air.
yeah.
I'm more of a character writer, I find. And so I indie published it, and I'm looking at, hey, any other publishers out there that it would be nice to do traditional.
Yeah.
But I would advise anyone that's got any kind of dream that they, first step, you got to get up and do it. That's
yeah. I'm buying your book today after this call. I didn't have time to do it before since we talked and did it, but I'm going on Amazon as soon as we end this call. I'm going to buy it because I think it's fascinating. It seems like it's right and the right time to do this and the way the world is and stuff and how people are living longer and people are isolated. And I just think that it sounds like a really amazing 3 characters that you've written about.
Thank you. And I did, with some of the vitriol that is going on in society, that's one of the reasons I also did want to highlight medical assistance in dying, because I wanted to show whatever situation, in this case it's medical assistance in dying, what if you don't agree with the person? What if you do agree with the person?
Yeah.
What if you are the person? So I wanted to show, how do we come together, people? We may not agree. We may not even like each other, but let's listen and have a conversation versus all this vitriol that's going on. It's sad.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is an interesting topic is you want to do this. If you want to do this, I'll just give you an example. My aunt just had surgery, and she says that if I come out of the surgery and I cannot live the quality of life, or I'm a vegetable or whatever, I don't want to be kept living. I don't want to be, or if I'm not living this quality of a life, I want you to take me to the state of Oregon, and I want to do the assisted suicide in Oregon. And she wanted to make sure that me, which I'm almost like one of her children, and her other 2 children understood this very clearly, because she did not want to live that quality of a life, because she could have ended up living another 20 years or so as a vegetable or not having that quality of life, because she's very active. And so I think that some people could say, yeah, we'll do it. And then I think both of her children would have gone by her wishes. Some people may say, yes, I'll do it. And then they'll live another 10, 15, 20 years or even 5 years as that. And that's not their wishes. And I think people really need to listen to what people want.
And at this point in Canada, you can't do an advance directive like that. That thoughts about having that change. Right now, they're actually letting you, like, for example, if I say, oh, I'd like to have medical assistance in dying, and you used to have to be able to say at the time, yes, I still agree.
Okay.
But then it comes up, what if I have a stroke or something happens in between that time? Even we used to have a 10-day waiting period. So they have put a directive in that you can make that decision. But something long-term in advance, at this point, my understanding is no, that's not the case. So we're working on it.
Yeah. I think it's everybody's right to do what they want with themselves. You have a fascinating book. I can't wait to read the next one. I'm going to read this one first, and I can't wait for your next one, because I think your topics are amazing. Again, Daphne Leone, am I saying your last name?
Yes,
okay.
Middle
name, Daphne Leone Wright, and the name of her book is On Love and Death and Belonging. It's on Amazon.
Again, and it's also on Ingram Spark.
And she also has a website, which is Daphne Leone. Let me spell this for you just so. It's DAPHNE, and then LEONIE, and then WRIGHT.com. Check out her website and check her out. And I think that you're an amazing author, and I'm so happy that I got to interview you today.
Thank you so much. I've listened to some of your podcasts and I really enjoyed them.
Thank you so much. It was great having you on. Everybody, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about what you think about Daphne's book whenever you read it. So thanks so much, Daphne, for being on.
Take care.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.